Okay, boys and girls, we're ready to send this thing into orbit. That's what I'm telling you. As long as we can get FAA approval from those bastards, then we are ready. Absolutely ready, boys. We are absolutely 100% prepared to send this thing all the way up to orbit and to have it splash down in Hawaii or wherever the hell we're gonna send it. Yep. That's what I'm telling you, and I'm the guy in charge. Nobody else at this company has the authority to tell me to say anything different. Just a moment. Hello, SpaceX. Hi, Elon. How are you doing today? Son of a doing just fine. Just fine, Gwen. How you been? Oh, doing fine, aside from cleaning up your latest steaming pile of dog. But other than that, doing just great. What you mean? What you talking about, Gwen? I haven't said anything, right? Nothing at all. Oh, I'm sorry. That just always makes me laugh. So Elon, you haven't been telling people that you're ready technically to launch Starship as soon as those big bad guys at the FAA give you approval to go, right? Starship is technically ready, isn't that right? It is technically ready, Gwyn. It's ready right now. It could launch tomorrow if I wanted it to. Really? So how did the stacking go? The stacking's done. See, there's the stacking right there. We stacked it. Yeah, and how did the structural integrity hold up when you had 1,300 tons worth of fuel inside the Starship? How did all that work out? Was there any fuel at all inside the Starship when you did that stacking? Yeah. Elon? No. And what about this colossal desalination plant that you're going to need for the deluge system for sound suppression and a lot of other important things? How's that coming along? Hey, Gwen, no problem. We can throw that up as fast as we can at a gas station. Elon? Have we even broken ground on it? No. That's right, so let's get one thing really clear. Me engineer, you crazy visionary. So I'm gonna come on over there, we're gonna have a nice coffee, and I'm gonna talk about things that we can actually do until the FAA gives their approval. Okay? See ya, Elon. It's no fun being a crazy visionary when she's around. Now, I want to be absolutely clear about one thing. This is not a video about how it's going to be impossible for Starship to fly to orbit this year. It is impossible, but I'm not going to rehash the same old stuff. There's just too many obstacles, both in terms of technological challenges and in terms of FAA requirements, including that methane power processing plant and desalination plant. That alone is going to delay things into next year, and there's no way around it. But that doesn't mean that Starship can't fly in the meantime. As a matter of fact, it should fly in the meantime. And in my opinion, SpaceX has become so laser focused on getting Starship to orbit that they've lost sight of a couple of very important things about this design, primarily reusability. This, as most of you know, was the flight of the SN8, the very first Starship that really took to the heavens as opposed to a tiny little hop, and the first Starship that was designed to land after an extensive flight. And as we all know, the ship came down and it actually landed fairly precisely. It just came down entirely too fast and exploded on impact. Quite unfortunate. If it had succeeded as SN15 did, there would have been lots of other opportunities to keep perfecting this process. But instead, what you see right here happened time and again, and sometimes the accidents were even worse. As we all know, SN9 came down at a much more ugly angle than SN10 did. This actually was a much more impressive landing. Really an excellent landing for a first attempt. But what came afterwards was, for the most part, a lot worse. Even SN11, as you're going to see here in a moment, that was perhaps one of the worst failures, because the ship didn't even make it into a landing configuration. Instead, it airbursted, spreading debris all over the place, and even insulation as far as South Padre Island. My point that I'm trying to make here is that this whole process of launching Starship, maneuvering it back to the pad, and landing it safely so that it can be reused is far from perfected. The only vessel that has succeeded was SN15. SN10 almost succeeded, but as we all know, it landed very roughly and damaged its landing gear in the process, was on fire, and eventually exploded. As we all know, the only successful flight that's been carried out of a Starship prototype has been SN15, and even that was not a 100% success. Like SN10, SN15 was on fire, and very well could have exploded just as SN10 did. It really was just a stroke of luck, in my opinion, that the fire suppression system managed to put the fire out, and they managed to expel all of the remaining fuel quickly enough in order to prevent a catastrophe. Now, at the same time, we've just recently, to carry out static fires again. This particular one from Mars Embassy is a static fire of a vacuum Raptor. The very first one, actually, that's been carried out since the program began. Yeah, that may sound incredible, but that is indeed the case. Vacuum Raptors have only been tested on a Starship once, and this happened just a few days ago. And then, of course, you have the one static fire that was carried out from a Super Heavy, and this was a couple of months ago. So really, not a great deal of activity, at least as far as engines firing, and certainly no space flight of any kind from Boca Chica in a long time. Nothing has happened since that amazing and exciting day when SN15 took flight and astounded all of us, including, of course, myself, since I was personally there. That was such an amazing moment, and it has yet to be repeated. And I find that to be a shame, and actually also a disservice to the program, because it's not just about entertaining the public, even though that would certainly be helpful. As these flights continue, more people come to watch them. The more people come to watch them, the more it helps the local economy. The more it helps the local economy, the more of positive feelings continue to grow as far as public opinion is concerned with the FAA requirements and all of the comments that have been made about this, which are going to be curtailed as of November 1st. So really, over this several month time period since the flight of SN15, there hasn't been the kind of flood of tourism to the launch pad at Boca Chica that there used to be when these flights were taking place every month. Now, this doesn't mean, of course, that SpaceX should be doing this purely for tourism's sake. That would be a woeful waste of money. But there are so many things that can be accomplished with these kinds of flights that have yet to be completed. Of course, reusability being the most important factor. As most of us know, Elon Musk really wanted to refly SN-15 after its successful landing, and it was prevented from doing so probably because of the fire and the damage that the fire did to the ship's propulsion system. But regardless of the reasons, no SN model has been reflown to date, and that is something that is simply unacceptable to the Starship program. Given the number of refuelings, on-orbit refuelings that are necessary to take Starship to the moon, to Mars, or any place beyond LEO, you need reusability. You can't have 8 to 10 or 12 Starships sitting around in storage somewhere ready to be launched. You need to have these ships reused as rapidly as possible, and thus far, that has yet to be accomplished. The concept has yet to be proven, and it has to be proven if Starship is going to be successful in the long run. Otherwise, it simply becomes a stainless steel SLS. Carrying out additional suborbital flights of Starship prototypes would not be a violation of any FAA guidelines, nor would it be a violation if a Starship prototype fired all 6 of its engines as opposed to the 3 that it's been using thus far. We haven't had a single Starship that has used vacuum Raptors and the sea level Raptors simultaneously, unless you count the most recent static fire, which may have used 2 engines simultaneously, but certainly not all 6. So we haven't even tested the Starship as it is with its full complement of engines. That needs to be done, and it needs to be landed successfully and then reused. All of these things could be done without fulfilling any of the FAA's requirements. Why isn't it being done right now? Well, I think it's probably because of the laser focus, as I said, on getting to orbit. Also, it may be possible that SpaceX is concerned that if there were some kind of accident, some kind of mishap that causes damage in the Boca Chica area, that could sabotage their efforts to go to orbit as far as the approval of their FAA application is concerned. There could be a public outcry against it if they keep this going. But that was always a risk during these flights, and they really should keep these things going in order to keep the project moving while they're waiting for this elusive FAA approval, which probably is not going to be approved for some time after November 1st. And there's something else that SpaceX could be doing without FAA approval at this point, and that would be to hop the Super Heavy on its own without a Starship stacked on top of it. Why would we want to do this? Well, it's because SpaceX is intending to use a very innovative and never before tried capture method in order to retrieve the Super Heavy. This has never been attempted, as I've said before, and is going to be an extreme engineering challenge to say the least. It would be a lot easier to proceed with this program by hopping Super Heavy with, say, 6 engines or something along those lines, enough to get Super Heavy to a substantial enough altitude in order to simulate a re-entry, and then bring Super Heavy back down to Boca Chica and capture it. Now, this is something that just needs to be done if Super Heavy is going to be reused, and reusing Super Heavy is an absolutely vital part of the success of this system. So why not hop this Super Heavy while you're waiting for FAA approval? All of these things should really be done right now unless SpaceX is running short on funds. That's a concern that I have mentioned in the past, although I kind of doubt it. I think SpaceX has the funds that they need in order to proceed with this project, but I think they've just become too focused on orbit, and they just can't go to orbit until a lot of boxes are checked. And in the meantime, there's a lot of very important things that could be accomplished. As most of us know, SN20 lost a number of its heat tiles during a pressure test. Also, SN15 lost a number of its tiles during its flight. So the heat shield seems to be a bit of an issue for Starship, and the only way to really get an idea of how well this is going to hold up, how well this system is going to perform, is to put it through flight. Now, you don't have to put it through orbital flight to at least get some idea of how the heat shield is going to perform. You could take it up to higher altitudes. Now, I'm not exactly certain what kind of altitude you could achieve with a fully fueled Starship using 6 Raptor engines instead of 3, but I know it'd be a lot more than 10,000 meters. It would subject the tiles to a lot more vibration, put them through their paces during a much longer descent, and we could just see how well they hold up. I think that it would be a very worthwhile experiment. At the same time, so many other things could be accomplished in terms of reusability. We need to make sure that we can land Starship time and again and reuse it if this is ever going to work. There is every reason to do this with suborbital flights rather than orbital flights. As a matter of fact, even if the FAA document is approved and they give SpaceX everything they want, SpaceX will only be allowed 5 orbital shots per year, but 20 suborbital shots, which means suborbital flights are going to be a reality for SpaceX and Starship anyway. So why not get started now with the kinds of suborbital flights that the FAA has already approved? Now look, I get it. I understand why SpaceX would be totally focused on getting to orbit. If Starship cannot get to orbit, it will not get to the moon. It will not get to Mars. It won't get anywhere, and it will be a completely failed project. I totally understand that. But at the same time, there's just a lot of boxes that still need to be checked before an orbital shot can even be attempted. The methane processing plant, or rather the desalination plant that I talked about in a previous video, being one of the most daunting of these. In the meantime, however, this project can still move forward. There are still quite a number of things that have not been accomplished by Starship that need to be accomplished if this is going to be successful. Reusability, in my view, being the most important of these. And thus far, we have not seen reusability in action, and that absolutely needs to change. If you like what I have to say, if you also would like to see more suborbital flights of Starship until we finally get that orbital flight that we've all been waiting for, if you would also like to support the type of content that I release, it's all in the description. I could certainly use more Patreon supporters or a like and subscribe, and I will be very happy. So until Starship finally makes this orbital flight and also achieves the reusability that is necessary in order for mankind to expand throughout the solar system as we all want to see happen, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.